The most dangerous thing in the world is not a man who wants you. It is a man who is certain of you and has the patience to let you figure it out yourself.
My name is Isabelle Fontaine, and before I tell you the story, I need you to understand one thing. I did not fall easily. I was not the girl who melted at a strong jaw and a steady gaze. I had grown up around powerful men. I knew what they looked like when they decided they wanted something. I thought I was immune to it. I was not prepared for a man who didn't look like he wanted me at all, who looked like he had simply already decided and was waiting for me to catch up. It was a Tuesday morning in October. The rain was soft against the tall windows of our townhouse in the 8th arrondissement. The city smelled like wet stone and old roses. I had just woken up. Silk robe, bare feet, hair still loose from sleep. My mind on nothing more dangerous than coffee and a warm croissant. I turned the corner into the salon, still calling out to my mother, and stopped. There was a man in our living room. Not hovering, not uncertain. Sitting in my father's armchair, by the window, like he had been placed there by something that outranked both of us. And our eyes met, straight on, no warning, just him. Dark eyes the color of a sky deciding whether to storm. A jaw that looked like it had never once apologized for anything. Dark hair, white shirt, sleeves folded with the casualness of a man who has never needed to perform for a single room in his life. He didn't smile, didn't move, just looked at me with the quiet, certain stillness of someone who had been expecting me, specifically me. And then he said my name. Not mademoiselle, not a polite greeting to a stranger. My name. Low, unhurried. Bonjour, Isabelle. Like it had been living in his mouth for a very long time and had finally found its way home. Something about his eyes made me pause. Not their color, not their intensity. Something else. Something I could not name. My parents appeared minutes later, and they sat me down and they told me. 22 years ago, 2 families, 1 dinner table, 1 handshake. I had been 3 months old. He had been 4 years old. And somewhere over candlelight and old wine, my future had been quietly signed away before I could speak a single word of protest. My parents talked for a long time. I know that. I remember the sound of their voices. My father's careful and low. My mother's softer. The way it always gets when she is trying to deliver something, wrapped in love, that still has the ability to break you. But if I am being honest, I did not hear most of it. Because the moment the words began to take shape, the moment I understood what they were actually saying, I looked at him. Before I looked at my parents, before I looked at my hands, before I looked anywhere else in that room, I looked at him. And he was already looking at me. Not with guilt, not with the performance of innocence, just looking. The way you look at someone when you have been waiting for the moment they finally know.
And something about that, about the steadiness of it, made my chest tighten in a way I did not have words for. I turned back to my parents. I nodded. I said, very quietly, I understand. 2 words. Measured. Controlled. And then I excused myself.
I do not remember walking up the stairs. I remember the balcony. The cold air hitting my face the moment I pushed the door open. The city spread out below me, golden and indifferent and breathtakingly beautiful. Completely unbothered by the fact that my life had just been rearranged without my permission. I stood with my back to the door, arms wrapped around myself. I was not crying. I want to be clear about that. I was not crying because I was too angry to cry, and too elegant to scream, and too proud to let anyone, especially him, hear either. So I just stood there and looked out at the city. And then I heard the door behind me.
Quiet footsteps. That particular shift in the air that I had already, in less than a single morning, learned to recognize as him. He didn't say anything at first. He just came and stood a careful distance behind me, looking out at the same city, letting the silence exist without rushing to fill it. And then, Isabelle. Low, careful. The way you say a name when you are not summoning someone, but simply reminding them you are there. I did not turn around. Are you all right? And something about that question, so simple, so insufficiently small for everything I was holding, I turned around slowly, looked directly at him, and I smiled. Not warmly, not with cruelty either. The kind of smile that a woman produces when she has been raised with grace, but is standing at the absolute edge of it, holding on with the tips of her fingers. Am I all right? I said. Not a question. A repetition. Precise and deliberate as a scalpel. You are asking me if I am all right. And then I looked out at all that impossible golden beauty and said it quietly, like something I was only just allowing myself to grieve. I had this idea, foolish, I suppose, the way all beautiful things are foolish, that I would fall in love before I fell into a marriage. That someone would look at me one day and choose me so freely, so completely, that I would never once have to wonder whether I was chosen or simply inherited. Then I turned and looked directly at him. Now, here you are. And there goes my dream of falling in love, of being swept off my feet, of getting the proposal of the century. Absolutely. Perfectly. Fine. The balcony was very quiet. He held my gaze through every single word. Did not flinch, did not look away, did not reach for an explanation or an apology or any of the things a lesser man would have grabbed for in that silence. He just looked at me. And then he said, very low, very steady,
I know. Not defensive, not apologetic, just I know. And I am sorry that it is not what you imagined. I am not going to pretend that it should be anything other than exactly what it is. But I am asking you to let me show you what it can become. Not what they decided. Not what was promised. What it can become. Between us. If you are willing. The wind moved through my hair. I looked at him. This stranger, with my name in his mouth, and patience in every line of him. And I said nothing. Because I had no answer yet. Only anger. And underneath the anger, something quieter. Something I was not ready to look at directly. Not yet. He stayed. That was the part nobody warned me about. Not a visit. Not a courtesy call. He stayed. Guest suite. 3rd floor. His presence in the house, like a change in barometric pressure. You don't always see it, but your body knows it. I avoided him. Deliberately, precisely. With the focused energy of a woman who is absolutely not thinking about him constantly. I called my closest friend Celeste the moment I was alone. Whispered like actual scandal. They have arranged my marriage, I whispered into the phone. To whom? She breathed. Raphael Cavalier. Isabelle, she said slowly. The Raphael Cavalier. Of Cavalier Finance? Offices in London, Geneva, and Singapore? That Raphael Cavalier? Flat warning. Do not, I said. Do not. He is objectively, Celeste, I am calling you for moral support. He is objectively the most. I hung up. That night, I stood at my bedroom window, looking out over the wet rooftops. I did not want this. I wanted to choose. I wanted to fall in love in the ordinary, reckless way, messily, unexpectedly, without anyone's signature on it. I repeated that to myself 3 times. And then, a sound from the garden below. I looked down. He was standing in the rain. No umbrella, no jacket, just looking up. And when our eyes met, he didn't look away. Not even for a moment. I stepped back from the window and told myself my heart was beating fast because I was cold. He came to me the next morning, not the other way around. I want to be very clear about that. He walked into the library, set a coffee beside me, exactly how I take it, which I had not told him, and sat across from me like he belonged there. I looked at the coffee, then at him. How did you know? I pay attention, he said. Simply. No performance. To you, specifically. I wanted to be irritated by that. I had every reason to be. But those eyes? I could not finish the thought. It was the 3rd evening. We were at dinner, the 4 of us. The long table, the good china, the kind of meal my mother prepares, when she is trying to make something feel normal that is not. The conversation had been careful all evening. My father talking about business, Raphael answering thoughtfully, my mother refilling glasses nobody had asked her to refill. I had been quiet, quietly eating, quietly watching, quietly doing the thing I had perfected since Tuesday morning. Being present in a room while keeping every real feeling somewhere my face could not betray it. And then my father set down his glass, looked at my mother briefly, and said, with the calm of a man delivering information he had been rehearsing for several days, "The wedding will be in 2 weeks, Isabelle. The families are in agreement. Everything is already being arranged." The table went very quiet. I set my fork down, slowly. 2 weeks. Not, we should begin thinking about a date. Not, perhaps in the spring. Not, whenever you feel ready, my darling. 2 weeks. I looked at my mother, then my father, then I looked at Raphael. He was already looking at me. Of course he was. He had known. He had been sitting at this table all evening, already knowing. And for just a moment, the briefest moment, I thought, have I seen those eyes before? I pushed the thought away. I told myself I was simply too aware of him. I picked up my glass, took one small, precise sip, and smiled. The smile I had perfected at charity galas and board dinners and every room in my life where showing what you actually feel is simply not an option. 2 weeks, I said. Pleasantly, evenly. How wonderful. And Raphael? Raphael watched me with those dark, patient eyes, and I knew. He knew exactly what was happening behind that smile. Every single thing. And somehow, that was the most infuriating part of all of it. I held it together through dessert, but somewhere between the plates being cleared and the candles burning lower, I felt it. The smile beginning to slip. Just slightly. Just enough. I set my napkin down, looked at my father, and said, very quietly, very precisely, "Papa." "I am trying," I said. "I am genuinely, sincerely trying to hold myself together with some grace and dignity. But you are making it very, very hard. And I would hate, truly hate, to do something unimaginable in front of the guest." My mother pressed her lips together, and my father, my wonderful, impossible father, leaned back in his chair and said, "Go ahead, honey. He's not a guest. He's your husband. No need to be shy. Let it out." My mother laughed. One short, startled, helpless laugh she immediately tried to hide behind her hand. I looked at Raphael. He was looking directly at me, and the corner of his mouth, that composed, unreadable, insufferable mouth, lifted. Just barely. just enough. I stood up. "Good night," I said, with every ounce of dignity I had left, which at that point was not very much.
I walked up the stairs, closed my bedroom door, and stood in the dark. 2 weeks, 14 days. Less than a month ago, my life had been entirely my own. And now? I sat on the edge of my bed. And for the first time since Tuesday morning, I let myself be not elegant, not composed, not fine. That is when I found the photograph. Behind a row of books, my father never moved. 2 families, 1 table, candles, laughter caught mid-breath, and at the edge of the frame, a small boy. Dark eyes, dark hair, 4 years old perhaps, looking off camera with the seriousness of a child who has just been told something he will carry his whole life. I turned it over. My father's handwriting. A date. 4 words. The night it began. Something cracked open in me. Quietly. Without permission. Because this was not 2 men making a convenient arrangement. This was a little boy who had no say either. I brought it to him the next morning. He looked at it for a long time. "Since I was 16, he said, before I could ask. "My father said, 'There is a girl in this city. Her name is Isabelle. One day, you will go to her.' And you just accepted that?" "The accepting was easy," he said. "The waiting was the difficult part. I had no word that felt equal to that. So I said nothing. And somehow, he understood. My mother came to me that afternoon. She told me about his mother, her closest friend, gone 8 years now. Her last wish? Find her son someone who would truly see him. Not the name, not the fortune, just him. "I looked at you in your crib," my mother said, "and I made her that promise." I thought about that for a long time. A mother loving her son so fiercely that even in her final hours, she was still trying to take care of him. My resistance didn't disappear, but it became something smaller. The next morning, my mother found me in the library. She sat down, took my hand. "I am not asking you to love him. I am not asking you to be anything other than yourself. But he is here. He chose to come. Go outside with him. Talk to him. Let him be a person to you before he becomes a decision. You have been so busy being angry at the arrangement. I wonder if you have noticed that the man inside it has not once given you a reason to be angry at him." She left, and I sat with that for a very long time. I found him in the salon that evening. "Walk with me," I said. He didn't ask where, didn't ask why. He simply stood, reached for his jacket. "Lead the way." We ended up on Pont Alexander III, the Eiffel Tower in the distance,
The scene dark and slow below us. The gold statues catching lamplight on both sides. We stood at the railing, neither of us speaking. Then I asked, "Did you ever want to say no to any of it?" "When I was 20, he said. "For about a week. And then I thought, what if she is exactly who I would have chosen anyway? What if the arrangement just got there first?" He looked at the water. So I stayed. I had nothing to say to that. So I said nothing. And he didn't try to fill it. On the way back, we passed a flower stall, still open along the Cours la Reine. He stopped. Without a word, handed the vendor a few euros, turned and held out a small bunch of white ranunculus. Not roses, not a grand gesture, just flowers. Chosen quietly, offered simply. I took them, and we walked home, without making anything of it. I looked at him once on the walk home, just briefly. Those eyes. I could not quite place them. And I had stopped pretending that I wasn't trying. It was his last evening before London. He appeared at the library door and said quietly, "There is a film showing on Avenue Montaigne. Would you like to go?" I looked at the window. October rain. The uncompromising kind. "Or," I said, "we could watch it here." "Do you have it?" "I can find it." He sat on the other end of the sofa. I opened the laptop. Somewhere in the middle of the film, a small boy appeared on screen. Raphael said quietly, "That child has remarkable eyes." And I said, without thinking, without meaning to, without any permission from my better judgment, "Yours are more beautiful." The room went very still. He turned to look at me. I looked at the screen. "Thank you," he said. And I could hear the smile in it, without seeing it. Neither of us said another word for the rest of the film. He left on a Sunday morning. 1 week. London. He said goodbye at the door. Formally. Properly. But at the door he turned. "Thank you for the walk." And then he was gone. And the townhouse felt suddenly, inexplicably, too quiet. He called that evening. I almost didn't answer. I did. We talked for a while. About nothing important. Before he hung up, he said, "May I call you again? From now on. Not assuming. Not telling. Asking." "Yes," I said. And that was that. The next morning, my phone lit up. "Good morning, Isabelle." That evening? "Good night, Isabelle. How was your day?" I stared at it for a moment. Then I typed back, it became a rhythm. Morning, evening, every day. Without discussion. Without it ever being decided. I began to anticipate it. The way you anticipate something you will not admit you are waiting for. He did all the calling. Always. I noticed that. On one of those calls, he said, "I love the sound of your voice in my ear, Isabelle. I want you to know that." I didn't respond immediately. Just held the phone a little closer. On the third evening, he called. We had been talking for a while when he went quiet. Then, "I have been thinking about what you said on the bridge, about being inherited. I want you to know something. I work very hard to get the things I want, and I will work very hard to get you, because I want you." I went still. "What do you want, Raphael?" "You." "I want you, Isabelle." The room was completely silent. I could hear nothing but the sound of my own heartbeat. And then, when I found my voice from somewhere beneath all of it, "Good night, Raphael." I hung up, sat in the dark, and pressed my hand flat against my chest. Like that would help. On the last night before he came back, I picked up the phone before he called. He answered on the second ring. "I was just about to call you," he said. "I know," I said. And then, quietly, he laughed. And I smiled. Into the phone. In the dark. Alone in my room. Like someone who had forgotten to keep their guard up. The wedding was on a Friday. A small chapel in the 7th arrondissement. Candles. Old stone. The smell of something that had witnessed 100 years of promises. No grand cathedral. No overwhelming guest list. Just family. Just the city. Just us. I wore ivory silk. Simple. Clean. The kind of dress that does not need to announce itself. I remember walking in and seeing him at the altar. Dark suit. White shirt. Standing the way he always stood. Like the room had been built around him, and he was simply being courteous enough to occupy it. He watched me walk toward him. And the expression on his face, I had no word for it then. I am not sure I have one now. It was not the look of a man receiving something he was owed. It was the look of a man watching something arrive that he had quietly, privately, desperately hoped for, and had never once allowed himself to assume. I reached him. We stood facing each other. And then he spoke his vows. And somewhere in the middle of them, quietly, so quietly, he said, "I have been certain of you longer than you know. There was a moment, years ago, when I almost walked away. And then, without knowing who I was, you complimented my eyes. I stopped breathing. Because I have only ever said that to one person. A stranger. A crowd. A bump I barely registered. Until I turned around and saw those eyes looking at me, already certain, already decided. "I'm sorry," he had said. "It's okay," I had said. "You have beautiful eyes." And then I had walked away, never knowing. And he had stayed for years because of a girl in a crowd who didn't even know his name. I looked at him now at that altar, and I understood everything. The music rose. The words were spoken. The city waited outside. And just like that, we were married. Now, I am sitting in a hotel room in the south of France. White walls, open shutters, the Mediterranean glittering outside like it was put there specifically for this moment. I am still wearing my wedding dress, and I keep smiling. I cannot seem to stop. Every time I try, it comes back. Because 2 days ago, 2 days before the wedding, he came to my room. There was a knock at my door. I thought it was my mother. "Come in," I said, not looking up from my book. The door opened, and something about the quality of the silence made me look up. He was standing in the doorway. I stood up from my chair, rather too quickly. I would notice that later. "Raphael?" He looked at me steadily. "I wanted to see you," he said, "before the wedding. I know you are confused. I know you are still angry somewhere underneath all of this, and I am not here to talk you out of that. But I want to make you a promise before Friday, while you can still look at me like a stranger and decide what you believe. I am not going to be the thing that was chosen for you. I am going to be the thing you would have chosen yourself if anyone had thought to ask you. I don't know how long that takes. I don't know what it looks like. But I know this. Every morning you wake up and decide to give this a chance, I will make sure you never regret it. I will never make you feel like a decision that was made for you. Every day, I will make you feel like a choice I made for myself. And on the days you forget why you chose this, I will remember. Enough. For both of us." The room was still. And then, without a word, He reached out, slowly, deliberately, and ran his hand down my hair. All the way down. The full length of it, long and loose, his fingers moving through it like something he had been wanting to do for a very long time and had been patient enough to wait for the right moment. He looked at it, then at me.
You have the most beautiful hair I have ever seen. I noticed it the very first morning. I have been noticing it every morning since. Something in my chest came completely undone. He lifted his hand and tucked a strand back gently. Then he leaned forward. Slow, careful, deliberate, and pressed his lips to my forehead. Warm, still, like a seal on something that had no need to rush. He straightened and looked at me. My beautiful Isabelle.
And then he stepped back, reached into his jacket, and knelt. Right there, in my room, in the evening light, 2 days before our wedding. He opened the box, and I stopped breathing. Inside, against dark velvet, a ring. And beside it, a bracelet. Diamonds. Both of them. The kind of beautiful that doesn't announce itself, but simply, quietly, takes the air out of the room. He looked up at me from where he knelt, those dark, certain, patient eyes, and he said, "Can I be your choice?"
That is the moment I keep coming back to. Sitting here now, in this dress, by this sea. Not the altar. Not the chapel. Not even the vows, though I will carry those for the rest of my life. What I keep coming back to is not the diamonds, not the promises, not even my name in his mouth, the way he always says it. It is his eyes. The way they looked at me when he knelt. The way they found me at the altar and never left. I noticed them the very first morning, that Tuesday, that ordinary Tuesday, when he looked up at me from my father's chair and said my name like he had always known it. Dark. Still.
Certain. He truly has the most beautiful eyes I have ever seen. And I think, sitting here now, in this dress, by this sea, that I loved them before I knew I was going to love anything about him at all. And somewhere in a crowd, years ago, I told him so, without knowing that I was sealing something
that would find its way back to me on a Tuesday morning in October and change everything.